Hey guys, Heather Hurt here. I decided to do a video for the second theory synthesis. It's the end of the day, the kids have just dismissed, so don't mind the crazy hair. You know what it's like, especially since we haven't been outside, it feels like since September. Anyway, I decided to give you guys a little tour of my classroom and then talk about the theory that I picked for this learning activity, which was differentiation. So just a little background. I know I went over this in my introduction, but just kind of like a little refresher. This is my 13th year teaching. I did 3 years in kindergarten, 6 years in 5th grade, and then this is my 4th year in 4th. As much as I love the babies, my heart is definitely in intermediate grades. And so I absolutely love it. At my school, we teach all subjects. So I'll kind of show you how my schedule is laid out and kind of explain why I teach things the way that I do and when I do, and then show you how I implement differentiation into some of my whole group activities, but then also when I do stations. So the first thing I'm going to show you is my class calendar, which is right here on the board. So my school is lucky enough to have 16 specials classes. So I actually get about an hour and a half long planning every day. Don't get too jealous though, because we do a lot of meetings and professional development stuff in those. But we call them Core X because they, a lot of our classes go along with like our curriculum. So like they'll have 2 math classes, my kids erase that. They have 2 science classes, they have a social studies, we have a writing lab, we have cultural connections. So they get a wide variety of extra classes in that hour and a half. It technically is also supposed to be our EIP support. So that's kind of how we get that covered. But anyway, I make time every day for every single subject. It may not be a whole lot, but I feel like it's more beneficial for them to get a little bit of it every single day instead of chunks of it broken up over time. So our morning, we start with science, then we move to social studies, then we have our little writing block, we go to recess and lunch, then we come back and we do a novel read aloud, then I do literacy stations, then math stations, and then it's time to go. So that's a little bit of our day. I have currently 23 students in my classroom. My makeup is EIP, ESOL, and I do have 3 IEL students. All 3 speak Portuguese. At this point in the year, their English is getting better, but they're still pretty limited. So the way I have my classroom set up is like this. So I kind of have like a U of desks and then a couple in the middle. These middle groups right here, the kids utilize for stations as well. And then really the only time they're ever in their seats for like an extended period of time is in the mornings for morning work. Otherwise, they're moving around the room a whole lot. My table is right here. I don't have a traditional teacher desk, please excuse the mess. So I just have my table and then like my computer, and like this is my area. So I do, I have all of my supplies organized into these labeled buckets. And then my kids actually get a set of supplies labeled with their classroom number. And on Fridays, I check to see if they have all of it. And if they don't, they have to use classroom money to buy the stuff back. And it's been a great tool for me this year. I have gone through so many less pencils, scissors, glue. So it's definitely something I'm going to continue. Right here, we have our textbook cubby. I don't really use my textbooks a whole lot, just because I'm not a huge fan of them, but I use them as like supplemental resources and things like that. And then I do have 2 closets again. Don't mind the messiness. I have some games. I have some extra resource books, a bunch of extra supplies. This one is just construction paper that you can see my children are pretty much in charge of because it's a hot mess. And then I have my sink area. There's just some extra supplies in there. And now we're gonna move on to technology. So we are pretty fortunate that even though we're Title I, we have had staff who have written lots of grants. So we've actually gotten quite a bit more technology than I know a lot of the other schools do. So in each classroom, we get 5 iPads. We get 10 laptops, although 3 of mine are broken and they're so old that the technology people won't even come fix them. So technically I'm working with 7 right now, but it's totally fine. So we have our technology set up back here. They use technology for a variety of things. Any research papers or research activities that we're doing in class, they can use the technology for. I also have technology stations during both our literacy station block time and our math station block time. So our technology gets utilized a lot in here. Here is my class library. So this bookshelf right here is just all my fiction, novels, you know, and just like kind of like the fun reading that they can pick from. They don't tend to use these books as much because they get on a website called Get Epic and they do a lot of reading there. And they also like to go to the media center. But then this is my academic bookcase. So they've, of course, been messed up a little bit through the year. But each of these buckets is a different unit for either science or social studies. So like this is, you know, like my planets and space. Well, it's technically supposed to be that this is my water cycle one now that I'm looking through it. But like I have water cycle, I have space, I have simple machines, I have weather, and then I have like the American Revolution, Civil War, and things like that. This area right here is another one of our station tables. Right now it's set up with some math games that they were playing today during stations. But generally I try to have some kind of games in my literacy and my math stations. And so that's usually where they play them. And then last thing I want to show you before I get into like the differentiation in my stations, like I said, we always do a novel study read aloud. And so right now we're reading The One and Only Ivan. So each one of my children has a labeled bucket up at the front of the room, and it contains their book and then any kind of like little activity that we're working on with them, with the book. So that stays up front. They're really good about keeping them organized and up front. And then this last thing is my supplemental station work. So we do like some math versatiles. And these are like the tiles they use. There's like a fraction activity for stations that they've been doing. So they know where all this stuff is. They've kind of been trained on it. So when stations start and I tell them where to go, like they immediately know what to go grab. And then finally, this whiteboard, I call it my problem solving board. So I have my standards on it. I also put like, you know, class announcements, birthdays, they earn compliments and they get to spell out words, and then we have like a party. I put my standards and objectives, and then this board is one of my math stations, and it is all review from everything we've learned in math this year. It's heavy with fractions right now because we are wrapping up our fraction unit, but I mean, you know, I have adding and subtracting and prime and composite, multiply and divide, like that's all stuff we did before Christmas. So this is used as a review station. And the majority of my kids, this is one of the ways I differentiate, the majority of my kids just get a sheet of paper that's kind of laid out like this, and that's where they do their work. But for some of my lower level learners and my ESOLs, their paper is contains more of the information. Like I actually type the problems in the boxes and things like that. So it's right there. And I give like little hints on kind of what they need to do to solve them. Even though the boxes are labeled with what they need to do, I tend to just give them a little bit more guidance. All right, so the next thing I'm gonna show you is my stations. So we do 2 stations a day for 3 days. Monday, we're doing introduction to stations. Fridays, it's wrap up, catch up, and assessments. So stations are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's probably gonna look a little crazy when you see it, but my kids totally know how to read it. They understand it. You know, this is something that we've been doing since the beginning of the year, so they get it. So I have 6 groups, and they go to 2 stations a day. So my groups are heterogeneous. So I have at least 1 higher level learner, 1 on grade level learner, and then 1 to 2 below grade level learners in each group. That way they can kind of rely on each other for help when they need things to do. And they don't know that at all. So they just think they're in groups that I put them in. They do change every once in a while. Sorry, my kids are knocking out the door. They do change every once in a while, but these ones are not quite as fluid as the small group stuff that I'm gonna show you in my plan book. These I tend to change more only if there's like behavior issues, like if kids are having a hard time getting along and working well and things like that. So I typically always have at least one science activity and one social studies activity in my stations. This week I didn't have a science because we had just wrapped up a big unit on science, and I was a little behind in social studies, but generally there is a science and a social studies standard or station. And then here are my math stations, set up the exact same way, the exact same kind of grouping. They go to 2 a day, and they totally understand how this works. So it's actually been a really good way to kind of keep me and them organized in their stations. So the final thing I wanted to show you today with differentiation is my planning for small groups. So I do my plannings based on formal assessments, based on classroom, just observations, talking with my kids, seeing how things are going with them. And then I group them based on that. They never see the groups. I keep them in my planner, so they don't know why they're in what group they're in. And I pull 2 groups a day during literacy stations and 2 groups a day during math stations. And we are working on, I always try to find, especially my literacy stations, I try to find a passage that's on their level, but has to do with either whatever we're teaching in science or social studies, so that they're getting like that double dipped, but getting it on a level that they can handle. So this is just a preview of kind of how I lay it out. So like I have my groups, the names in my groups, and then what level passage I need to find. And then I just generally pull my passages from ReadWorks. And I meet with my 2 lowest groups twice a week, and then all the rest of my groups just once. And then the same with math. So I meet with my 2 lowest twice a week, and then my middle groups and above level groups once a week. And generally with math, I am pulling them and working with them on whatever it is that they're struggling on the most. So like even though we're doing fractions, my low group is still struggling with division. So we've just been pounding division every single time they're with me. But then like my high groups, I'm extending on the adding and subtracting mixed numbers that we've been working on. So it really just depends on what group I have as to what I'm doing. But this is definitely a work in progress. I love differentiation, but it definitely is something that has taken me years to kind of not perfect, because obviously there's always room for growth, but to kind of get it to where I want, to where I feel comfortable that my kids are advancing. And I see it in their, assessments and things like that. So I know that it's working, but, it is something that I am constantly working on. And so when I saw that it was one of the theories, I got really excited and knew that was the one that I was going to do. I found a really awesome article about differentiation that will be included in my write-up that I submit with this video. But yeah, this is my classroom. This is how it's set up, how I try to get differentiation in every single day, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. I know it was a little long, but I appreciate it. Bye.